Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and today we're going to be talking about the VOCAL Clear MG Professional Edition. Before we get started, I have a couple quick thanks to give of the people who helped set this review up, which would be Andrew from headphones.com and of course, headphones.com. They actually did me a huge favor by lending this to me for a review. Nobody's paying or asking me to say anything good or bad about this product. Okay, this headphone is one of the best constructed headphones that are on the market right now. This thing's construction and looks and quality of materials is just on another level for this price tag. It's actually really well constructed. Now, this also comes with a killer accessory set that other manufacturers should be taking notes of. A whole other set of extra pads, 2 cables, one medium length straight cable, and a second coiled shorter cable. Now, the quality of these cables I actually do prefer over the previous generation, but it is notable that these no longer come with an XLR cable like the previous gen did. Now, as far as just pure compliments on my end for this thing's looks, I think this is one of the most visually stunning headphones that exist right now. Now, there is one quality control concern that I want to bring up here, and that is going to be that there is a measurable and an audible channel imbalance between the left ear and the right ear. Now, unfortunately, my sample size for this is only 1, and there aren't a ton of other user reviews of these new MG headphones that are out right now to really draw comparisons against. So I'm not sure if this is just single to mine or a more systemic problem. Once the volumes are matched, so the drivers perform just about the same. Now, this may not necessarily be a driver issue. What it could be is a slight spring difference between the spring on the right yoke and the left yoke, one being a little bit stronger than the other, and it not seating properly. To me, on my head, it feels the same, but just because it feels the same doesn't mean it actually is the same. So that is something to take notes of. I'm not sure if this would change over time, as I only have this headphone for a limited time. All right, mid-range on this headphone is the sole reason I will recommend this headphone to people. If you like mid-range at this price, this is about the best mid-range that I think you can get your hands on. It has a lot of great features in it. It's punchy, it's super fast, it's rich, and honestly, it has all of the details that I think one can ask for at this price throughout a wide variety of different vocalists. And it's actually the most impressive because of how wide a variety it can cover for different sounding voices and different sounding people and different recording styles of voices. It's actually extremely dexterous in that way and very impressive because of it. So any vocal focused music here is going to sound just super top notch on this thing, in my opinion. And it makes things like pentatonics just so enjoyable with how rich and vivid everything sounds and how vibrant all the different vocalists sound and how much they stand out. Now, overall, I would kind of describe the voice as sounding super clear, and I don't mean that as a pun with the name. It really does sound very just clear above most other things. Now, this is a slight departure from what I remember from the original Clear, which had a slight warm shift, which I actually really liked on that headphone. Though I do think that this is technically throughout the mid-range a little bit better, it does lean a little bit towards the cleaner end of voices than the warmer end of voices tonally. Now, bass, they also did really right. This thing hits hard, it hits fast, but it's also got an incredible amount of clarity and texture and just kind of aliveness to the bass response. It can feel a lot of different ways. You can kind of come at it with a more smoother, harder hitting bass response, or something kind of more analytical, a little bit faster and a little bit punchier, and it can really keep all of it. It can also keep kind of a really hard hitting, sustained bass note, which is not something that a lot of headphones can really do very well. In fact, how it handles the bass is one of the most impressive aspects of the bass response, where everything just literally sounds effortless. It just sounds so easy for this headphone. Now, texture and quantity wise, I don't know if this beats everything at this price point, but it's certainly within the top players and does beat some key headphones at this price and below it. 1, it beats its sister headphone, the LX. 2, it beats the LCD2C for bass response, in my opinion. And this is a clear winner for bass response over something like an HD800S. I think a comparable headphone that I might want to take the bass over, but for different reasons, would be something like an Aria. The Aria doesn't have the quantity or the speed that the Clear has, but it does have a more open and transient bass response that sounds a little bit more surrounding, a little bit more involved in the environment than this does. But I wouldn't complain about this bass at all. I actually really like it. Treble response feels like it's holding back a bit. The best way I can describe this is sounding like it has a veil, but without the loss in clarity. It just seems kind of dark, and it always feels like it's got more to give, but it never quite gives it. And it actually kind of leads me to desire a little bit more treble forwardness out of this headphone, even though from a technical standpoint for details, I consider this pretty average for the price range. It doesn't blow me away, but I find that often if you're listening to anything with a decent amount of mids and a decent amount of bass in it, the details are really, really hard to extract on this headphone, and this actually does have some unfortunate negative implications for its professional use case, which I'll talk about in just a second here. Now, I do feel like the quality of the treble response is a notable upgrade over something like the LX, and is a tonality upgrade and feels a little bit more lavish than something like an Aria. If it was better by just being a little bit more forward, I would totally consider this to be an absolute top player. Quick note, I'm not sure if the standard MG here is a little bit brighter. I have been in talks with people that it might be a little bit brighter, but so far VOCALS' official response on this is that they're supposed to be exactly the same for sound quality. It's just the looks that are different. Okay, so imaging and soundstage, and again, this is once the channels were actually balanced. Imaging is pretty good. It doesn't have a lot to work with though, and the sound staging is unfortunately a really weak component of this and gets outshined by many other headphones at even substantially lower costs. That is one of the biggest downsides of this headphone, in my opinion, and probably second to that of the treble response. The imaging is actually really good with voices, and it's actually amazing how well this headphone can pick up different kind of recording styles of a voice and present it in so many different manners within a confined space. And that confined space is pretty much all the sounds are happening pretty much in your head. There's not really much going on beyond that. And that is an area where I think they could improve things a little bit here. It's also notable that the LX is a little bit more spread out in terms of kind of openness for sound quality. And overall at this price point, I don't find that the imaging and the sound staging has a lot of kind of blackness or depth to the image, and things aren't really that spread out, and everything does kind of feel on top of each other. And personally, this is not my preferred sound style, though some people do like this. I just think from a technical standpoint, it's a little weak here. Okay, so is this for professionals? Quick disclosure, I am not an audio engineer. I'm not an audio professional. I do not work in a studio, but my experience with headphones is immense. And I do have a lot of experience with a lot of different styles of headphones, hi-fi headphones, professional headphones, and I think I can get a pretty good understanding of what is good and bad for a professional headphone. One particular thing that this thing is good at with the voices is its ability to understand what the song wants it to do. So you're going to really pick up on different voicing styles, different voicing recordings. All that different stuff is going to come in through the vocalist, and it's going to be able to play in a very dynamic fashion all those different styles. It's actually really great for that. However, there are some areas of this headphone that I think are red flags depending on your particular professional workflow. One of them is going to be that the treble is just simply too dark. Now, you're going to be able to pick up things like buzzing and humming, and that's going to come across pretty clear, but you are actually going to miss out on a fair amount of details for things like hissing, for slight background noises that you wouldn't otherwise hear on this headphone, and for even things like treble artifacting. It's just not forward enough to pick up on all these details in either a live environment, which I wouldn't recommend because they're open, but if you did have to use it, I wouldn't pick it. But if you're looking at this from a mastering standpoint, I think you're gonna simply just miss things that you wouldn't otherwise miss on some other headphones. And delivering a professional product to a client, this can be seen as unprofessional and in some cases even unacceptable, which is too bad. Now, the sound staging is unfortunately limited, which does have a negative effect of sometimes things are just not clear as to where they're happening and where they take place in the sound environment. And depending on your recording style, this usually doesn't have to do with vocals that much, but it can have a lot to do with instrument placement, or if you're working with any sort of cool imaging and sound staging techniques, you're gonna miss some stuff on this headphone, plain and simple, which sucks. And then last thing is there is a lack of room information in this, so you're not gonna be able to be picking up on echoes and things of that nature that you would normally pick up with other headphones. Those are pretty much all the notable upsides and downsides for professional use, in my opinion. Okay, so my conclusion here. The quality control issues, unfortunately, I'm working with a sample size of 1, and again, there aren't enough user reviews to really dictate if this is a systemic problem. Now let's discount that and not really concern ourselves with it and look at it in its peak performance. I don't really recommend this for professionals despite the name, unless you work with vocals specifically, and I would probably not use this as your only headphone. I would have maybe this one amongst many others if you're actually a working professional. Now for the rest of us, generally speaking, this is actually a really enjoyable headphone. I do think for the right person, the limited Soundstage is actually going to be a benefit because it feels very personal, it feels very involved with your ears and your head, and everything's kind of happening and it seems like it's all for you, and that's great under certain songs, but it can lack a little bit of life and movement in the audio that other headphones might be able to display a little bit better. The bass response is exceptional, the mid-range is exceptional, the treble quality is good, I just would prefer a little bit more forwardness. So overall, despite the QC issues, I actually think this is a pretty good headphone that I would have no problem recommending to people, and it's beautiful. So that's going to be it. Thanks headphones.com for lending this to me to review. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next video, guys, my name's Josh, signing off.